Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 13 of Sorry We're Closed. We're in the teens now, folks. What an honor to get to the teens. I mean, I guess I was probably going to get here regardless, but ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Episode 13. You just heard Will Millbrooks come on and essentially just FaceTime with me and just talk shop. It's always cool to have some of these guys come on and talk about it because, you know, you don't get to see a lot of these guys, you know, personalities and things like that outside of baseball, especially right now. Or, you know, you talk about the Jared Carabases of the world, the Eric Hubbs outside of the Barcelona. You know, they put on this persona and this character almost. And, you know, people don't get to see some of the stuff that they would typically want to see, probably. Most people want to know these guys. So, but today we're going to talk about draft day. I know a lot of people, if you're a baseball player by any means, or if you're any type of athlete, the goal is to get drafted, right? You know, whether it's, you know, you're in the NBA, into the NFL, into the Major League Baseball, the goal is always to get drafted. And so I'm going to take you a little bit through what it's like for that to happen. It's an experience. I mean, it was crazy. And for a guy that, you know, I got drafted in the first round. I got drafted in the 28th round, so that was 852nd overall out of high school by the Minnesota Twins. That was 28th round, and it was an experience. But I will say that experience was a little bit different than the go-around in college. And in high school, you know, I wasn't getting drafted in the top 10 rounds or the top 5 rounds. And I remember me and my father coming up with a price. We actually were sitting down with the Milwaukee Brewers, and they came to our house and just talked to us about what it might take for me to sign a professional baseball contract. And me and my dad had the, I believe, six-figure minimum. You know, we were going to look for $100,000. If you're going to give me $100,000, I'll leave and come back to college later. Looking back, that would have been an atrocious move. You know, knowing what minor league baseball is and knowing that it is not this, you know, this you know, where everyone goes and everyone's treated equal. That's just not how things work in any capacity. You're a farm animal to these guys, and you know, if they've spent X amount of dollars, the more money they spent on you, the more chances you get. And sometimes it feels like in the minor leagues, you know, these guys are just on the team to give the first round, second round draft picks a place to play to get better until the big leagues. It's not even like, and sometimes these guys make it to the big leagues because they turn out to be good, but it's not made for them. And it's a sad reality. So going through the draft in high school, you know, my mom asked, funny, oddly enough, they asked what kind of money we were looking for. My dad and I were realistic, said, you know, 6 figures. They asked my mom, and my mom asked what Bryce Harper had signed for. And we all get a good kick out of that because obviously I was not signing for Bryce Harper type money. But, you know, we came and went, got drafted by the Twins, nothing ever happened, whatever. Went to college, and I'll start off with the Cape League. The Cape League, you know, I pitched well, became a reliever, got on a lot of people's maps, you know, had some agents come after me, all that good stuff. And then you go into fall ball and at Monmouth, and then you have like scout day, and then you kind of just roll through and you see who's interested, right? So, you know, we have scout day, you know, every team is there with multiple scouts, which is always a good sign. And so I'm there. I remember the Mariners guy, I think I told you guys this in another podcast, the Mariners guy comes up to me and says, hey, you know, they're here for you. I was like, you know, we had a good team. We didn't have any, you know, draft prospects that year besides me and maybe one other pitcher. So it was, I understood that. I knew what was happening. But it was still cool to hear, you know, going through the process. And then you go after the scout day. I threw well. I think I threw like 99. Like, it was a good day. And then you go through the process with the meetings, right? And in college, because I was projected possibly in the first round, we had a meeting with every team. We had meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And, you know, some went well, some didn't go well. No, I wouldn't say they didn't go well. They just, you know, you're like, I'm probably not going to go with that. That team's probably not going to pick me. You know, they have, you know, you look at the teams like I remember the Royals, for example. The Royals had a high pick, and but they was like third overall was their thing, and they were very honest. Listen, we're not taking you third overall. You're more of a late first round, supplemental first round, and early second. And they talked to me, and they said, if you get to the early second round, what would it take to sign you? And I forget what I told them, but we got to that. We had the conversation. And you just go through that with every single team. One team after the other. You sit down with these guys and you talk, and you want to get your personality. They want to get to know you a little bit more, and so they know who they're drafting. So the season comes around, and now every start that I have, it's mobbed with scouts, which is a cool feeling. Gets you hyped up for even the slow games, and you just start pitching well. I had a great year. I remember my parents used to say they used to show up to the games early because they wanted to see like the scouts slowly come in. They wanted to try to figure out what teams they were on, what teams they were from, and so forth, to see who was the most interested, who they saw more often, stuff like that. And so it was a good round. It was really fun experience. And then you get to draft day. So let's say draft weekend. The draft's on the Monday, and you start getting phone calls. Your agent gets calls. They don't call you, but we have advisors, quote unquote, because now I have an agent in the NCAA. But so they talk to your advisor, and your advisor calls you on what's being said, and so we're chatting, and I remember the day before is kind of when you get a few more phone calls and people trying to figure out where their draft boards, who they think will be available when, and so forth. The Red Sox called me, and I believe the Blue Jays were interested. The Blue Jays had like 2 or 3 picks in the 20s. The Red Sox had one pick in the 20s, one pick 31, one in 37. And I think I can't remember, there's a few other teams that had, I remember the Yankees, prior to this was not the same day, but the Yankees prior to this had said that if I had made it to their pick, which I believe was 30, that they would take me. Tommy Smokes, later would tell me that they took Ty Hensley, who never, I think, made it out of A-ball. But, whatever. I don't care about that. But moving on, so all these teams call you. All these teams try to get a gauge on where you're at. And I remember they asked me at 31, the Red Sox asked me, at 31, what's the number it's going to take to get me to sign? And I remember saying $1 million. And that sounds outrageous. Think about your life. Think about playing a sport. Most people that have listened to this are probably baseball players or have played a sport in some capacity or know people that played sports. Think about your whole life playing a sport and being good, but you never think of yourself as one of the best players in the country or a guy that's worth over $1 million. And all of a sudden now, they're asking you, what are you worth? What are you valuing yourself at? And I did not want to go below $1 million. That was like a benchmark for me. It was more of like a cool thing. If they offered me $950,000, would I have taken it? Of course I would have. But I wanted that $1 million mark. I wanted to say that, I signed for $1 million. As a 21-year-old kid, that's pretty cool to say. So that was the mark. So we go into draft day. Obviously now jitters are high. We know kind of who's eyeing me, who's not eyeing me. Obviously there were some teams in the beginning of the first round that you have no chance. And I have some good friends that are going to go in the first round. Mark Appel was a big time draft pick. He would later get drafted by the Pirates, and then later to decline that, go back to Stanford and then get drafted first overall the year after by the Houston Astros. And great guy, really good dude, just never worked out for him. And he retired, I think, before I did. And he wasn't able to put it all together, which was unfortunate because he was a good dude and he had a lot of talent. Just, again, wasn't able to put it all together. But we get into the first round, and again, it starts, I think, around 7 o'clock, I want to say. And it's all televised, the first round. So the first day is just the first round. It's the first round and the supplemental first round. Now, the supplemental first round, as you guys probably already know, but I'll tell you anyway, supplemental first round is when a team at this time is like when teams trade, lose a guy to free agency or whatever or what have you, they get, whoever signs that guy, they got picks because of this. And that year, the Red Sox had 2 extra picks because they lost Jonathan Papelbon to the Phillies, I believe. I believe it was the Phillies. And so they got the 31st overall pick and the 37th. So because there's 30 teams in Major League Baseball, so the first round's 30, and then supplemental first round is these extra picks they get, extra first round picks that they get in order to, make up that gap for losing these guys. It was I forget why they did it, but they did it. I'm pretty sure they did away with it now. I don't think they do it anymore. But this is, what they did. So we get the day started, the draft, and it's slow, but I'm not expecting anything. It takes, I think they did like 5 or 10 minutes in between each round, each pick, which took forever. And then commercial breaks, it was a shit show. But the first 10 picks, you're like, all right, yeah, no problem. I remember having a sheet of guys that I thought were going to go ahead of me, right? And I don't remember what the rule was. There was a rule that had just come out that talked about it's something about, it made something weird where guys were going to start picking high school guys. Oh, I think there was a maximum you could sign a guy for, something like that, where it made it more appetizing. You had to take high school guys early, otherwise you wouldn't have gotten them later in the draft, because we didn't have the cap room or the signing bonus room in your budget in order to sign these guys, because obviously it takes more to get a guy out of high school than it does to take him out of college. So you had to do that. So I remember having my list of, I think I had a pitcher's list and just a general players list, but I remember having my list, and every time someone would get called, I would find them on the list and I'd mark them off. And I remember going through the list and being like, guys, some of these guys that are top 15, top 20 picks type guys, they're not going. I don't know what's going on, but these guys aren't being taken. And now I'm thinking worst case scenario now because these guys aren't being taken, now I feel like maybe I'm going to get pushed back into the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, probably not that late because I knew where I was, but I'm getting pushed back into the draft, and every pick you lose is like $100,000 off the signing bonus. So it was a lot of money. So I remember looking at this and just being like, son of a bitch, I'm not sure this is going to happen anymore. And it was absolutely crickets from all the teams from pick I'd say they called early in the first round just to kind of check in, but it was absolute crickets from pick 3 to pick 23. It was no one said a word, and it was me, my parents, my brother and sister, and my grandparents on my mom's side. We were all sitting there watching and hoping and waiting for whatever it turned out to be. Just hoping that, because I had a party planned the next day. So I was pretty much banking that I was going to get picked today or very early the next day. And, we're sitting there waiting. Obviously now as you get later in the draft, you're like, okay, this should be my time. This is kind of when people were saying I would go, blah, 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 blah. And pick 23, 24 rolls around. My phone rings. It's my advisor, Jeff Randazzo at the time. And he calls me. And he goes, Pat, the Red Sox made contact. They have the 31st overall pick, which was about, at that time, about 9 picks away. And he said, listen, they had just taken their first guy, which was a guy by the name of Devin Marrero, shortstop out of Arizona State, big-time guy. He was originally talked about as a top 3, top 4 pick, maybe even 1-1, but he struggled hitting. He didn't hit well. So they dropped him pretty considerably. He had a pretty bad junior year, so he dropped pretty considerably, but he was a phenomenal defender. So they took they're not really a flyer on him. The guy was very talented. He's still playing to this day. I think he's in AAA with the Marlins, but still not like a home run. So they take him, and now they're getting ready for pick 31 and then pick 37. They're 2 compensation picks for Jonathan Papelbon. So they call Jeff, and Jeff calls me, and Jeff's like, well, listen, they're what would you take? I know we talked about this yesterday at 31. Is your number still $1 million? Obviously, I asked the guy, I don't really know. He's trying to help me. I was like, is this smart? Should we be higher? I know that they have these things called slot, what slot is at this big. And I think slot at 31 was $1.5 million. So I was taking a $500,000 discount. And looking back, probably not a great idea. I thought, because I was a Monmouth guy, I was a small school guy, I should probably take a discount, like all this stuff. $1 million is a crap ton of money. Like, why the hell would I not take that? Looking back, I ended up dumping this agent and going with Scott Boras. And I remember Scott telling me that, like, they know, they do way more in-depth stuff, and they've been doing it a lot longer than, my agent at that time was doing it. And they said that, the Red Sox ownership is known to have their eyes set on one guy, and they'll try to negotiate a deal with him. But if I said I wanted Slot, they would have given me Slot. They weren't, unless I came in with like $3 million, like they were giving me, as long as I was reasonable, what I asked for. But I went lowballed, and they said, okay, sounds good. And they they hang up, and I'm sitting there, and I don't really know what's happening. They didn't call me, they didn't tell me anything, like nothing's happening. It's absolute silence once again, which you hate. People talk to me, let me know that something's happening. And so pick 30 comes around. I remember the Yankees saying they might take me here. So we're hoping, fingers crossed that the Yankees are about to pull the trigger on me. That didn't happen. And my whole family's upset. My mom, from Staten Island, born and bred. My grandfather was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. And so when the Dodgers moved out to L.A., he was heartbroken. And so he switched teams to the Yankees. And so, like, whole family's like Yankee fans. I actually grew up rooting for the White Sox for whatever reason. The way I picked my favorite teams back in the day was I'd ask my older brother when I was like 4 years old. I'd ask my older brother what team should I like, and he would, whatever team he said is what team was now my favorite team. The same with favorite players. So my favorite team technically was the White Sox, and my favorite player was Frank Thomas. It was completely random for a kid from New Jersey, but that's how it was. But as I got older, obviously you watch the Yankees more, especially in that 90s run, the early 2000s. Like, it was a really good team. And it was fun to watch. Derek Jeter, Mariano, like Roger Clemens. That Roger Clemens, Mike Piazza battle was always cool. Like, these things were cool to watch. So obviously, you kind of trend towards that. And my family loved the Yankees. So they didn't take me. So they're all pissed because they thought maybe that was the time. But now the 31st pick is up, and it's the Red Sox. And they had already called and shown interest. So we were like, I don't know what's happening. They ended up taking a lefty out of Florida, Brian Johnson, as a pitcher. We weren't sure. He was a two-way guy, and he won like best two-way player of the year in college baseball. He was a great first baseman as well. So we weren't sure which way they were planning on taking him, if it was a pitcher, if it was not. And obviously at this time, I'm hopeful that I'm getting taken by a team that, like, I'm their guy pitcher, like Wise. Like, that's who they want. You don't want to go in and already have competition. But again, didn't matter. And I didn't know at the time anyway. So, we get, I think about 32, 33, they call back. And Jeff is like, hey, listen, the Red Sox are calling again. 37. Do we have the same number at $1 million? I said, yes, $1 million. Don't want to go below it. Now, slot at 37 was $1.3 million. Again, now I'm taking a $300,000 discount. And obviously, I don't want to do this, but I don't know any better at the time, and I want to get drafted in the first round. That's like a thing. It's a big milestone to be a first round draft pick. I remember there's a few things that guys get excited about when people talk to me about baseball at the bars and stuff like that, because I never made a huge name in my career. But they ask, "Did you make it to the big leagues?" Yeah. Who was your agent? Scott Boras. Wow, that's cool. And when did you get drafted first round? Those three things are what people get the most. Oh, you were a first round draft pick. Oh, you're a Boras client. Oh, you did make it to the big leagues. Those are those moments that I call them. So it was a milestone. That's something I wanted to do. And so they called. I tell them $1 million again, and then they call back probably one pick later and say, "Hey, listen, we accept the $1 million offer at 37. We're going to take you." And I said, "Fantastic, that's awesome." So we get through the next pick. Picks like take forever. I don't even know who they picked. It was all a blur. We're all sitting there. And 37 comes up, and it's the Red Sox, and they're on the clock, and then they go up and take their pick, and it's Dwight Evans, who, I don't think he's a Hall of Fame guy, but he is, Red Sox Hall of Fame guy for sure. And so Dwight Evans goes up there, and he goes, with the 37th pick in the Major League player, first year amateur player draft. They have some ridiculous name for it. The Boston Red Sox select Pat Light out of Monmouth University.
I'm Dwight Evans with the 37th selection of the 2012 first year player draft. The Boston Red Sox select Pat Light, a right-handed pitcher from Monmouth, U, West Long Branch, New Jersey.
Pat Light could be considered the greatest high school pitcher to ever come out of the Jersey Shore. He finished high school 20-0, the best career record in Shore Conference history. That success didn't immediately translate to Monmouth, where he went 2-6 with an ERA over 6 his freshman year. Finally got it working 8-3 with a 2.4 Ernie, 102 K from 101 innings this season.
Well, the Leiter brothers are upset at you, man. I'm talking about the best coming out of Jersey Shore.
Well, 20-0. What was that like?
Yeah, well, that's true. And this guy wasn't even facing the situation of Snooki. I mean, he was facing real hitters, too. How about now?
I would later talk to Dwight Evans about it, and he said that he was nervous actually because he never heard of Monmouth before, and he didn't know if it was Monmouth or Monmouth or what was it. So he was very nervous about mispronouncing it, but he was very happy to see my name was Pat Light because that's probably the easiest name to pronounce in the world. He was happy about that, but unhappy about Monmouth. So I got drafted. Right before I got Dwight Evans announced it, my brother who's behind me, and I'll release this video eventually, my brother behind me goes, I just want to make it known that as of right now, I am still a Yankee fan. That would later, obviously, he stopped being become a Red Sox fan because his brother played for him. But a little funny thing: get drafted, everyone gets excited. We're hugging. Actually, if I showed the video at one point, my dad goes for a high five. I completely disregard that. And we're just hugging, having a great time. I think I ended up opening a beer or something like that. But actually probably like a Mike's Hard Lemonade. That's how I was soft back in the day. And it was just one of those moments you'll never forget. And it wasn't crazy negotiations. It wasn't, the bar I just bought Green Rock was way more. It was 6 months of negotiations, way more negotiations than it ever was in the draft. But it was such a cool experience to go through and to be a part of. And then the next day, you wake up. I had invited a bunch of friends over. We played cornhole out in my backyard with a bunch of beers. And then we took I don't know if you guys have ever been down the shore in New Jersey, but we took a Hummer limo to Bar A, which is, they do quarter beers, and then beat the clock. And then every hour it goes up a quarter. So it was ridiculous why I would take a Hummer limo there, but I did. I had fun. I remember at one point I yelled, "I'm a millionaire," which obviously after taxes I was never a millionaire, but cool to say. But it was such a unique experience and something I'll never forget. And it even rivaled my debut as as the best baseball moment of my career, because it wasn't what I was working for my whole life. What I was working for my whole life was to make the big leagues, but it was a big step in the right direction to become a first-round draft pick, to be signed for $1 million by one of the most storied franchises in the world, out of any sports franchise in the world. It was a really, really cool moment. And then I would later go on to get interviewed by the Boston Globe. The Boston Globe asked me who my favorite team was growing up, obviously thinking, they were like, "Oh, you're from New Jersey. Who's your favorite team?" Give me one of those looks, and I was like, "I'm a fan of baseball." I never was a fan of anyone else, and everyone just laughed, obviously knowing that more than likely I watched the Yankees, especially in the 90s, early 2000s, being the 91 baby. So it was just overall just an unbelievable experience to kind of go through and be a part of. And even to this day, I lost out on probably $300,000 that I probably could have gotten. But, you don't know those things. You don't know back. Hindsight's 20/20, so it's nothing you do about that now. But it's something that I hope it'd be cool for everyone to be able to go through that. It's very rare, obviously, to be able to do that, but it would be cool if, to have everyone to have that type of experience in their lives, whether it's whatever profession you're in, or whether you're getting promoted or what have you. But to get that phone call and then to see your name be drafted. And then end up in a video game. I was in MLB The Show a couple years later. It's just the whole thing was unbelievable, and I'm probably told that story about 1,000 times at Green Rock. When people come and ask me about certain things, but and talk to me about baseball. But honestly, it never gets old. If you ever came and asked me about my draft, unless I don't even know. I'm not single anymore, so I wouldn't be talking to a nice girl buying somebody's girlfriend, but. It never gets old talking about those things because they were such great memories, and it's some things I won't ever forget. But that's all I got for you guys today. The draft story, episode 13. gonna call it the draft because I'm sticking to that little whatever is like the kind of like the subject of what we do. Just do the and then whatever I call it afterwards. But we got the fall coming in hot for Green Rock. And if you guys don't know, because I see most of you guys are up in Boston are listening to this, the fall is a big time for Hoboken and Green Rock. It's a football season. I hope some of you guys get down to make it or come down to Green Rock and experience it a little bit. We'd love to have you guys. We'd love to take a shot with you guys or have a beer. But until next time, guys, I hope you guys have a phenomenal week. This is being released on Monday morning, so I hope you have a phenomenal week. And until next time, I'll see you guys at the bar.